All right, we are now live. So welcome everybody to Off the Record Airtable Secrets and Lore. We're a group of Airtable users exploring new ways to use Airtable to optimize our businesses and lives. Open to hearing from anyone about your experience, good or bad, using Airtable to make a positive impact in the world. We attempt to promote people coming from any level to share your ideas or ask questions. We also share our experiences, tips, and practices, and offer ways to get help and get involved in the community. We meet every Wednesday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time. And if you want to join, you can go to www.videowithben.com at the given time. So to kick things off, this week is very exciting. We have a really big new product update from Airtable. And I know it's already been through all the channels and there's been a lot of reviews on it. But I'll share some of my initial thoughts on it, as I'm sure Rebecca and Camille will as well. Also, Chris will be back next week from my understanding, but he is in Disney this week, if you paid attention to last week. As far as Airtable interfaces, we talked a little bit before jumping on here. Camille said you get lost in the zone, and I brought up, I don't really know what my thoughts are on it. I haven't seen a really good use case for it yet. And I think for me, I haven't seen a good use case for myself or clients because it's in version 1 of what Airtable wants it to be. I think if they combined it with a pricing model change, it would have more. Like if it were say a user portal that got around their pricing model, I think there'd be more potential, and you can get access to the whole base. So maybe, I don't know if anybody has one that they want to demo. For those who haven't seen Airtable interfaces yet, maybe we could go through that.
I don't have like a completed project. What I usually do with new product releases is I'll just make a test something or other and test all of the limits that I can find before I jump into finding what a good use case for it is. Because I don't want to get halfway through building something only to realize that, oh, this feature that I want isn't there yet. So I could sort of walk through what I did for the built on air sort of thing we did on Monday, Tuesday. I don't remember what any of my shows are. Tuesday.
Yesterday, yeah.
But I can sort of walk through and share my screen so people can see what it looks like at least.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I can share, but it's going to be similar to yours. There's new interfaces, a section on the workspace level.
Yeah, so right off the bat, things are like a little bit confusing because you see them up top. If I didn't have any published interfaces, you would not see anything here. There'd be like a sort of just a banner letting you know that interfaces are a new thing. Interfaces are, at the moment, they are based on a particular base. So you can't create a new interface from here like you could on the workspaces where you could click just add a base. There's no add interface button here. So you have to go into a base in order to add an interface for it. So you would click on a base like you normally would, and then click on this interfaces button at the top left. And then I have one interface in it already. If I wanted to create another one, I would click there. And then this interface has 2 pages in it. So you kind of see the different sort of levels that come along with this new feature. Once you start getting into what the actual interface page looks like, you have different elements that you can add to the page that all relate back to data from your from a particular table or series of tables. So this is, I think, using one of their standard sort of templates. If I wanted to make a brand new one, I can sort of go over what that experience would be. I think I have to unpublish this this interface in order to do that, though. So this is what I mean by getting in and testing stuff out before you assign a particular use case for it, because there are limitations that aren't necessarily as obvious. And then the other thing is there's support articles already for Interface Designer. I recommend absolutely everyone go and read at least a few of these, because a lot of people ask the same questions over and over, and a lot of them are already answered in the support articles. Like, you're going to do yourself a big favor if you just read what's available already, so that you know before you jump in and start trying to build something.
So if you hit edit right there, then
Yeah.
add a new one. You don't have to unpublish it from you can like
Okay, I see what you're saying.
go out.
So if you wanted to build a new page from scratch, this is the sort of terminology. I was about to say, this is the interface that you see. This is the
Page builder.
page builder, sure, that comes up. You get to select some predefined layouts. They only have 3, and then the 4th one is just blank. But if you sort of click in between, you can see some of the things that you could add to an interface page. So similar to the, I think it's the summary app that lets you have a big number that adds up stuff together. Or similar to the chart app. I'm about to cough, so pardon.
Okay. So this to me looks a lot like the dashboard in like the app drawer.
Yeah, it's similar, but not quite. So you can have charts and the timeline and a grid, but none of the other apps are sort of represented here. So I think there's like a technical reason behind it. I think I have to sort of get into one to sort of explain what I mean. So up at the top is a filter component that I have, and I have it connected to both this grid and this chart. So if I wanted to say filter where order status is pending, like I would do with any like sort of view, it controls both the grid and the chart at once. That's not something you can do with the dashboard. You can affect what is shown in a view, and you can have each app sort of pointed at that view, but apps aren't able to like talk to each other.
Yeah.
In an interface, everything is sort of baked in together, and they're at the same level, if that makes sense. So this element, this is another element, this is another element, and they can all sort of pull from the same set of data. They can control each other.
Yeah, I remember seeing, I think it was Allie on, I don't know if she shared this on Built on Air, but she had this client, I think with Gap, and they had ran a script that you could like pick which record and it would sort the view to like a certain, like this dude had like 15 different companies. And so you could pick which company it was and it would filter all the different apps. But that reminds me kind of what you just showed, is you can just pick there. And then we have an embedded view. See, this still just reminds me of the apps, aside from not all of them being represented here, because the record picker, and I haven't used it extensively, but Dan's Amplify app had a lot of the same functionality as the custom record viewer kind of layout here.
Yeah, so Amplify, which is a third-party app in a marketplace, still lives in the app sidebar. So you would be able to have Amplify, and Amplify does let you set up a series of different columns like this and sort of arrange how you want to show not just the record you're looking at, but all of its linked records as well. Amplify lets you do that. You can't say select customer 1 and then have a chart for customer 1's products or whatever and have that match up if you're using Amplify. This is what Interfaces allows you to do. And not every app that's in the marketplace has been converted into interface compatible. So under the hood, the chart that's in the interface element selector, you add elements in this bottom left button here. It's not exactly the same as the apps, the chart app. It's very similar, but there's some amount of code that they change so that it can hook in directly to this system. And hopefully that's clear.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to point out was that box down there never disappears, even if you click off of it. Or at least
Yeah. So yeah, if you open it up and then you start clicking around like I'm doing now, it stays open. So you have to click it in it again to make it go away. That is kind of annoying.
So one of the things with apps that's unique is they can access any table in the base. Is that right? So it like,
Yes.
it's whenever you would embed an app, which was a beta for a while, I think you can still request it, but exposes the whole base. So
Yes.
I wonder with the new code, with the new chart blocks, or I don't know what to call them, the charts and interfaces, interfaces still expose the whole base as of right now.
Yeah. So this is, I've seen some people say, oh, this is a first step to a front end. It's not really, because it's still, you're sharing an interface with people who are in your base. If they're not already a collaborator and you try to add somebody to it, you will get a yellow warning box that says, hey, you're about to add somebody as a collaborator to your base. It's not, let me like publish this and give anybody a link and they could just view only. That's not really a thing quite yet. I have to be collaborators in the base in order to see a published interface. But I think it's more, it's difficult to describe exactly where it falls in the sort of grand scheme of similar sort of third-party kind of, there's front-end tools, and then there's more advanced internal tools that sort of allow you to use Airtable as a data source. So I think it's easier to say what this isn't. Reminder that this is a beta and it's only been out for like 2 days. So they're going to be adding new features as it goes on. And so maybe it could eventually become like the following things I'm going to list. At the moment, it isn't softer, it's not Pori, it's not Stacker. It's none of those. If you already have those sort of set up, I can only imagine a very small handful of use cases where it would be necessary or even appropriate to say, I don't need those anymore, let me build in an interface designer. You probably are using those other three because it does something that interface designer does not yet do. Usually having to do with base permissions. If you don't want to give view access to the entire base, those other three let you circumvent that. This option, you still have access to the whole base. You may not be able to edit everything in the base, but you still can see everything. So I want to drive that point home. This is, it is an internal tool still. It is not a front end or end user sort of thing yet.
I feel like this is like kind of like a big point in Airtable's history, because I can't think of, for myself or any of my clients, and I met with a few of them since this has been released, and I can't think of any use case that's existing that I would want them to be using this. But for new people coming into Airtable, if they have the knowledge that they have a lot of people coming in and they want them to use this in a certain way, I think for new use cases starting from now, that this would be the only way. But I can't imagine trying to make a whole team relearn the Airtable interface, because half of them already don't really understand how the current base is set up.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the advantages it has. Instead of showing someone an entire, every single table up at the top as a tab, and then everything just sort of in column format, it does let you rearrange your data in a way that's a little bit more visually presentable. So it might be easier to for your team members to learn this sort of layout, not to edit what the interface is, but to sort of experience the published version of it. When I'm thinking of it's a replacement for at the moment is if you have integrated with Retool or something like Jet Admin, which let me get to like a screenshot, you can kind of see
Or even Notion.
similarities. Notion is too complicated. I would say not Notion. Notion lets you do quite a lot of things, and it's basically softer but more.
Okay, well, my level of ability in Notion.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I'm thinking of something else. I'm thinking of Bubble. Yeah, Notion. I can see what you mean by Notion. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. But it's the first thing that came to mind was Retool. And you can kind of see some of the similarities between the types of components, or in Airtable's case, they call them elements, that you can drag and drop and sort of use that to visualize your data, but it's still not quite building a website out of your data.
Something that just came to mind was interface is like first person, and operating at like the base level is like operating in third person,
Yeah, I could see that.
like God mode. You can see like everything, versus here it's like you're like in so deep. Like,
Yeah, it's a streamlined, you're only looking at a smaller portion of your stuff at once.
Well, and Ben, how often are you actually on the other end of those systems that you build, inputting the data or using whatever implementation? So it probably, a lot of it doesn't even occur.
I would say like 100% of the time, because every single, like with the process that I take clients through, or any like typical software development life cycle, the first, like, it probably should be like the first half of it is getting the user stories and figuring out how each person's user experience is with this. So not only like the business owner, but like meeting with everybody on the team and figuring out how they should be interacting with it. If you're like interacting with larger teams, then like you have to do that stuff. Otherwise, it's not going to be adopted, and the client isn't going to be happy. But that's definitely something I take into consideration. And this just adds, to me, it adds so much more complexity for the consultant to learn and implement. And it's like one of the things that Airtable, I think, prides itself on is it is democratizing software creation. But I feel like this just adds so much more complexity because it's so customizable that any business owner or anybody like administering the systems is going to have to be an expert now in Airtable. And like, that's going to be like their role, or they're going to have to, it's going to be a consultant that is always coming in here and editing things. And that's like the thing that I like, that's why I am so against code. And like, I'm very, like, always, I don't know that I'd say bashing it, but we'll say bashing it for this example, is like, if you are a business owner and maybe you're a solopreneur and you have code in your system and you don't know how to code, you're tied to that developer. This is tying, or it looks like it's tying people to whoever's an expert in this.
I really feel like it's not that complex that only consultants would be able to figure it out. I think, again, it's been out for 2 days, so no one's an expert in it yet. And I think the average person, if you were able to set up all of your linked records and whatnot yourself in Airtable, you probably can figure out Interface Designer. It's not that there's zero code involved and it's dragging stuff around. You'll be fine. Like this, you could figure this out.
But the people that even get to be able to like figure out all of their linked records, like that already takes a ton of time, and this is just adding that much more on top of what's.
Yeah, no one's gonna get this overnight. You're like I said, you want to get in, you want to test something out that's not high stakes. Like, you don't want, like, if your whole company is using an Airtable and your company's based on that Airtable, you probably don't want to start fiddling around with that base per se.
I did.
Well, more power to you. But yeah, with any new feature, you want to try stuff out. Like, it was the same thing with automations. Automations opened up the door for quite a lot of people, and many people were able to just, if you start testing things, you learn You learn what you can do and what you can't, and then what requires supplementation. But it's just there's going to be a learning curve.
Yeah, so we got
From
a
the
lot of
web.
comments. I don't know if either of you guys are paying attention to the Facebook.
I can't see them at the moment.
Okay, so one person, I'm just going to point out Dean, he said, my understanding is that you can create an interface for a customer and share it with a client as a read-only collaborator.
You
And I
can,
think-
yes.
But does it expose the whole base?
Yes. Like one more time from the top. If you can see the interface at all, that means you are a collaborator in that base. You cannot share an interface with someone who is not a collaborator in that base.
Yeah.
They can be read-only, but they're still a collaborator, which means they'd be able to see everything in that base.
Yeah. I just want
And the way you would do that is you would click this left button over here and click it, go to base. It's that easy. And to get back there, you click interfaces.
See, I wish that the instance of interfaces that was on the very front end where you pick your bases and the instance of interfaces that's on the inside of the base were separate from each other.
I don't know what you mean.
Like, so,
Do you want to share your screen?
yeah, I can. I don't know exactly how to describe that.
Or, let me go back to where,
So
I'm just in Airtable. So what do you mean? This?
yes, I wish that what displays for all of the people that are in your workspace or are part of those bases, the part that they use, I wish that the kind of editor was separate from that completely, like they were two different interfaces, kind of what you consume versus what is edited.
You're saying the interface builder versus the published interface.
Right.
Okay. Ben, were there any more like comments or questions that we should go over?
there's a lot of comments from Chris.
Dancy?
Huh?
Dancy?
Yeah, Chris Dancy. Sorry.
Yeah. Bring it on.
So Chris said, sorry, Rebecca, there was some background noise. Chris said it's apps full screen, nothing else.
It's not. I want to clarify one more time. It is not the same code as the apps in the App Store, and the vast majority of apps are not available in the Interface Designer. They're separate. They're separate.
Limited.
Do not think of this as apps because you are going to set it yourself up for failure.
He also said get Camille water now.
Yeah, I've been sick for a couple of days.
I think he said something about it's about licenses, not features, because Airtable has the money, power, talent, etc. to build Pori software stacker, or I guess he said also acquire them, but they're not doing that because that gets around their pricing model. Let's see what else he said. This is like furry handcuffs. To Rebecca's point, they also need that permissions overhaul, which I think we called by the 1st of next year, or like the first month of next year. And then he said, this has the same functionality that the existing apps do.
If you're specifically relating to the chart app, then yes, the chart app does the same things that the chart element does, except for the live filter.
I feel like I could tie most of these back to app use. So like we have the embed block here. The only thing you can do extra is add records, which you can have an embedded form in the apps. If you used Ali's really complicated script thing where you filter a view, you could do like where you pick a record and then see charts and everything relevant to them. The charts are obviously look similar to the charts. Summary apps for the other summaries.
Yeah, let me, hold on, I'm sorry, let me click the edit button so we could go down the list. So elements, yada, yada, yada. So
Amplify for like
yeah.
most of the features. Timeline, the old timeline app that they discontinued for timeline. That was an app, right? I never actually
Yes,
used
it started off as an app. It was Gantt and timeline. They started off as apps and then they became view types.
They did say in their post in the community, though, that they would be rolling out more features pretty steadily.
Yeah, I don't think that's under a question. I'm just making sure everyone is aware that it is not the same thing as a dashboard.
But one of the things you can create is a dashboard.
You
And they
could.
call it a dashboard.
It follows similar use cases, but it is not the same thing as a dashboard, because as soon as people start using the same terminology for both, that's when people are like, how come I could use this app and not the other one? Because it's
No,
not there.
Airtable uses the term dashboard.
No, what I'm saying is it's not the same thing as, yeah, they're not directly, they're not directly compatible, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There's
So
a
what-
difference between Airtable dashboards, the feature, and
Yes.
a dashboard in concept.
Yes. So one of the sort of major things is that if you have any button field that's tied to an app, like open up in Page Designer or open up in whatever the other ones are, they won't work in Interface Designer because it's not, there is no dashboard. There's no app window on the side. It doesn't exist, which is why none of your buttons work. I've seen that question being asked a few times.
So
If you have a button that just opens up in a URL, those work.
So I just thought of this. One thing we had talked about on the Open Side show, which I was a guest on this week. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Camille, for having me. Was this has the potential to connect to multiple bases, not just one base. And the apps thing there reminded me, because you would normally just open it into the base, open the app on the base you're in. But if this has multiple bases connected to one interface, potentially down in the future, since they are currently kind of disconnected, what I think this has the potential to do is to circumvent their record limit issues when they load all the records and make it super slow. And like that issue of like, they don't have to load all the records to do something like this at once. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Like-
I don't know if it is under the hood. I'm sure I could tell if I look at the source code of this page. But if you didn't have this record list component on here, it probably doesn't need to load every record.
Because at most, this should be all the records in one table.
Yes.
So I would kind of be shocked if they released something like this that still had that same flaw, because this limits it so much. It's like the first person, and that like limits it. It limits like the. So for those who aren't aware of what we're talking about, when you load an Airtable base, it loads every single record in the base at once onto your browser. Is that right?
Yes. So even though I'm currently only looking at the purchase orders table, all 10 or so tables that you see up at the top are being loaded by your browser. So every record, is observable by your computer at a time. And what Ben is saying is, hopefully I haven't actually tested this. When you're looking at an interface, hopefully it's only doing the relevant tables.
Well, and not only that, but probably only the relevant fields. And so if you have big lookups or, fields with lots of linked records in them or something, maybe it will help with some of the load time on that.
Yeah, so that's another good point. Like not every single field that's attached to, this purchase order record is being shown here. I don't know if it's loading the other ones behind the scenes or if it isn't. It would be nice if it isn't, so that it helps with runtime and stuff. But this sort of grid that we're seeing here, this is all of the linked records to the selected purchase order. So, you know, I don't know how it's handling this under the hood, because this isn't pulling from a view, it's doing a live filter based on what the selected purchase record is. So there's no established view in my base that says only show me line items for purchase order number 3. It's doing that whenever I make a decision over here.
A really big thing for me is that I have a lot of fields that just kind of drive overrides or make a document or things like that, that people have to kind of wade through. And so I can do a lot of that with kind of our emoji system, you know, don't pay attention to anything that doesn't have an emoji in it. Or a lot of times I just put 3 stars in the field, just don't touch it, leave it alone, it doesn't pertain to you. So if you don't mind if I share.
Yeah.
One of the immediate use cases I came across was my trucks. And so if you're a long time off the record listener, you will kind of know a little bit of my story. I manage a bunch of trucks and a whole bunch of other stuff too, but part of that is keeping their inspections and registrations up to date. And also if somebody calls me and says, when did the registration for truck 800 expire? I have to be able to just immediately present that information. I also then have to kind of parse this information out to their respective managers. We have 40 plants in South Texas. And so I have 40 different guys that I have to bug for truck inspections every month. I kind of put this together really fast. This view is just looking at any of the trucks that are due for inspection this month, next month, or last month. And it is only the most pertinent information to getting that truck inspected and registered. Whereas this is an entire asset management system for a really big company. So I can give them this much of it. I can have it filtered down to only their plants, which I haven't put that together yet, and they can essentially see only exactly what they need to see and what I need them to see. Because if I try to show them anything more than that, they freak out and shut down and like no more technology for weeks at a time. So it's a really big game changer for anybody who's dealing with people who are not tech savvy, older people who are a little slower to adopt, and people that hate spreadsheets.
So all of those use cases are people who are not currently using Airtable.
No, your whole system's already in Airtable, right?
But Rebecca's the only user.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
And so they are, but they don't really know that they're using Airtable. Like they get a link to a form, or they get an email with a grid in it, or little things like that. Whereas with this, I don't have to fill up their email anymore. I say, hey, here's this, you know, you send a nice little email to each plant. It only has to be read only, so you don't have to pay for them. And we use Microsoft Outlook. So if they can use Outlook, they can figure this out. You can see everything from where the truck's been, what counties it needs to be registered in, any comments, which I utilize comments a lot back and forth with my superiors. And
yeah, honestly, the comments thing I think is something I just want to point out, that comments are not exposed to the API anywhere in Airtable. So that's the reason why there's no comments app, why you can't automate versus based on a comment and why you can't script anything related to comments, but you can view comments as its own element in an interface designer. So, and I believe read-only users can comment, right?
No, there's a commenter.
Commenter, sorry. Yeah, that's its own thing. But if you give commenter access, then they still wouldn't be able to edit data directly, but they would individually be say, hey, can you change this information for me, and yada yada.
Is commenter a paid license?
I don't think it is.
It
That
is.
seems
I was thinking
strange.
it is.
You have to pay for comments and personal views.
I thought it was edit privileges.
Nope, I figured that one out the hard way.
That's good to know.
I did a course a while ago, and I'm actually releasing it for free now, but one of my things was an Airtable pricing calculator. I remember going through that on there and learning that commenter was paid. So it's like kind of a, I don't know why. All right, I can see why from Airtable's point of view, why it would be a paid collaborator, but
For personal views, though.
I don't make the rules. So we'll see if they can use this. I'm excited to hear if you end up being like tech support for the whole company. Hey, I can't find this in the Airtable interface. Hey,
Luckily, so
there's
far,
a truck 807. Just click on 807. Oh, I didn't know I could do that. Hey,
so far between Loom videos and long phone calls, they've figured out how to use an Airtable grid view. So I
So
think
have you shared with them just to share a read-only share view with them,
I have
or
not.
just in the body of an email?
I have not yet.
Okay.
I haven't put anybody in any of these things right now. I'm just using it for myself. I literally built this like 4 hours ago.
Well,
So-
I meant the Airtable grid view, because you said
Oh,
they
the
were
grid
able to,
view.
yeah, they were able to figure that out. So
yeah, just
gave them
share.
a shared link. Okay.
Yeah, locked down. They still had to, have a password and all of that stuff. But they got share links for a while, and then I switched to the just sending the grids in the emails. But I don't think many of them particularly pay attention to them. So I think we're going to try this out. And really, especially if eventually you can have kind of, if I could eventually build, from what I understand of what this is going to be, first of all, I hate that you can't just get back to the home screen.
homepage. There's no Airtable button in the top left.
No, I hope that that's something that,
Yeah, right now you have to
Figure
go
out.
to base and then you click the homepage.
So to your point there, Rebecca, I wonder, for those who are using this, it's not going to be you. Like, it's fine if you're editing it, you can't see it. Like, that's your own hell. But for the people using this, they might not actually ever see any of these bases in the future, potentially.
Mhm.
Kind of hope. And so they would only be able to see like those different pages within the interface, theoretically.
Right, that's my hope. And to like a big thing, and I was trying to figure it out with Pori, but ultimately, if the one manager snoops on another manager's stuff, it's not really that big of a deal, but we kind of want to avoid stuff like that.
Mhm.
Right now, there doesn't really seem to be a great way to do that. However, I think if I could sync together, one, even if I need to have it all in the same base, fine. But if I could sync together one interface with just the views for that plant, as I would if I was going to just build a base to then give a plant. I lost my train of thought, but
Let me see if I get what you're asking for. You want either an interface or a PORI or something, a portal where they can only see, a plant can only see the data related to that plant. but
Yeah,
all
if
in
you
one.
log in as the manager of the Fredericksburg plant,
Yeah,
I only want, if you go click on customers, I want you to only see Fredericksburg's customers.
so right now you can set up interfaces to filter by collaborator, because again, it's for collaborators, it's not for end users, if you will. So it's not there yet, but I feel like that might be something that you could do that with softer for sure.
I
in
can't
Stacker.
words. I can't even. I'm having to build out the system first in Pro to get them to go enterprise. They're not going to pay for softer. I'm paying for PORI. I guess in a roundabout way they're paying for it because they're paying my check, but it's
them having the collaborators there. I think that's like the one strand of hope that makes me think that this might end up being a user portal, is that you can filter it based on whoever the current collaborator is logged in. And I think,
can I make it to where they can't change that? Because from what I see, they can just take that out and filter by whoever they want.
I don't know.
If they would still have access to the whole base.
That is true. So
like, that's like the one thing, like, no matter if anybody has access to interfaces, they'll have access to your whole base.
See, and so what I want to do is, I already have all of the views built out for all of my find records actions and automations. Every plant has a view.
Yeah, okay.
So I would like to sync everything down to, even if ultimately I would just like to have one interface, look at all of those views and not have to build 40 new synced bases. I don't think Airtable would like me doing that.
I feel like you can set up filters the same way you've set up your views, and you can copy filters from a view. So I don't know if you want to do a quick test on any of your yeah, if we get in here and if you hit edit so that we can play around with this interface and click the record list thing, you can you already have some filters in there. So it would suck probably, but you could make one page per plant.
And so I guess my thing is not only do I need them to know about their inspections, I also need them to know about their expiring projects and their customers that are over their credit limit, and all of these other things that right now I'm sending separate emails for. All of those things have to live in different places. And without, from what I understand, without syncing them, creating one base synced down to only exactly what I need them to see. And, then I have to run the automations to actually link all that stuff back to each other. Like creating linked record fields, having it copy paste into the linked record field to actually get the relational part.
Why is everything spread out between is it a record limits issue on why it's spread out between so many bases?
I do have a lot of record limits issues, yes.
Okay, yeah.
And so initially I was importing everything into one base, linking it all together, and then parsing it out and then linking it all back together, because the same information gets used, across AR and AP and this department and that department, but all for different things. Then there's also, it got to where the exports out of my system, my main system where I get all the data from, were so big on their own. Just trying to get them imported at all was like hours just for the scripts to run in the background. and then all of the automations that have to fire and all of the bases after that. And I don't do it that way anymore. Now you have each of these is a CSV. And so I just go dump them in there, and I have a series of automations and synced tables that just kind of format everything properly. And I have not ran into as many base limits. I'm also now archiving once a month. So basically all I do is duplicate whatever table it is, go through and undo all of the sync configurations, like cancel all the sync configurations so that it stays exactly as it is, and then move it to a free decommission workspace.
I feel like this is a good use case for building a prototype in Airtable that functions exactly how you need it to for like a week, and then handing that to somebody. Or actually I saw something like the Postgres to see, I don't know what it was, but taking this and just having the proof of concept in Airtable and then building it in something that's actually scalable.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing is that most of your problems are coming from the record limit, you know, per base. It's not necessarily like I mean, there's features missing, I'm sure, that would help with your use case, but it's not necessarily a feature that's what's causing the most amount of headache. It's the number of records you could have per base.
And just keeping people out of shit they're not supposed to be
And
in.
permissions. So there's two different things, and I think interfaces, its next iteration of it is going to, you know, be reliant on changes to both of those things. So people being able to have more records per base, and people being able to lock down view permissions, because edit permissions for the most part, yeah, it's most of the way there. I'd say it's maybe 75% of the way there. But view permissions, it's either all or nothing. So it's like 10% of the way there. There's a 90% improvement that we need to see for being able to control what people see. And interfaces lets you, once you're in an interface, you can't see the whole base, but there is a button that lets you get back to the base. So it's a half step.
The other thing too is I'm having a really hard time, even with some of my younger adopters, with views. People don't really get it. I don't know how to explain it any other way than it's different ways to look at the same data. Just whatever it's used for is the name of the view.
Are they having trouble figuring out like why use a table instead of a view?
No, more so remembering how to navigate views. And just kind of remembering that they don't have to filter whatever view they're in. Like, so in most of my bases, the top view and my personal favorited view is the full view. It's every field open 100% of the way and in the order that I need it to work in. And I'll hop into a base and I never change this view. I will duplicate and then make it a personal view. But I hop into a base and all of a sudden my full view is like 3 fields open and like filtered down to 4 records or something like that.
Is it what permissions are the people who are messing around with the full view? What permission level do they have?
Well, and so in this instance, I believe that person is an editor in that base. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're an editor in that base. And so, you know, I have kind of sat down and explained personal views and how to duplicate a view and how to make your own and how to hide it from everybody else. And
I think that's one of the fundamental things that I get from new customers, or like people who even just sign up for one call and then never talk to me again. is like the difference between when to use a new view and when to use a new table. And it's nearly always with like either contacts or the same type of data, just for categorized different ways. In Google Sheets, they would probably put it like certain, like say, for example, like you have a lot of vendors and you put all of your inspection, people who do inspections in one sheet, then you have, and it's just like a contacts Google Sheet. In the next sheet, you put like tabs at the bottom. The next sheet, you put your like surveyors, etc. And then you have like multiple sheets. You have like transactional data somewhere else. In Airtable, the fundamental difference between adding different tables for all those and views is in each view you filter to say this view is going to be surveyors and it's filtered. When people don't use filters in views, and besides just the one view that shows everything, I don't really like that, because each view should be a subset of the information. And that's one of the things I have to get across to all my clients is like one table has every single field in this table, or like each view has every single field. It might be hidden, it might not be. And it also has every single record. It might be filtered, it might not be. But each view is just a different subset of the fields and the records in this table. They're always going to be there. You can hide stuff and it's not going to delete. You can filter stuff out and it's not going to delete either.
Yeah, I think Airtable, we're all, I think, hoping for a change in sort of pricing structure / permission structure to make interfaces even more usable. But based on Rebecca's problem, I think in the interim, or if the final form of all of what these permissions are, I feel like we need something in between editor and commenter, because editors can change the values within records and commenters can't. But Rebecca, it sounds like you want people to be able to edit records but not edit any views. You could go in and lock down every view, but if you have 10 tables and 10 views, that's annoying and you might miss one and yada, yada, yada. But if you could just give someone a permission level that says edit records and nothing else.
Maybe like an interface user as a permission level.
Yeah, something that I've wanted before is one of the field permissions. You could say who can edit this, editors and up. I think commenter and no.
You can do like
the creator and up, editor and up, something like that, or nobody. And then underneath nobody, allow people to add records via forms, or allow automations. I want something similar for apps. That would be harder to do. There's a under the hood reason why that's the case. And an interface, allow this record or this field to be edited, but only in an interface, because then you'd be able to control when somebody sees that field, A, and then B, there's a bunch of stuff that you could control if that was an option.
Yeah. I feel like that has to be so challenging on Airtable's part, all of the different levels of permissions, because they have it at the field, the view, I think at the, you have personal, at the views, the tables, the bases, the workspaces.
Yeah,
interface potential.
I feel like it doesn't have to be that hard. Like
it feels that way.
Bigger change that can like suck for a little bit, but we figure it out than just giving a key to every door.
It feels that way, and then there's two sort of stumbling blocks I could see from Airtable's perspective as to why they haven't just pulled the trigger on any particular change. One, their pricing model is based on permission structure. So if you were to add a new permission level, or you were to adjust the ones that we have, or et cetera, you would have to figure out, does that mean my average customer will have to pay more or less? From Airtable's perspective, they're a company, so they want to make money, but they also don't want to suddenly upcharge their customers so much that they, move to a different product. And then the second being, I forgot where I was going. I had a second thing that was wrong when you start changing the permission structure. I think it kind of has to do with, like Ben was saying, there's so many different levels of where to go, and the fact that, again, like Ben said earlier, when you load a whole base, even if you're only looking at one table at a time, the entire base is being loaded to your system's memory. So they would have to change that in order to reasonably start limiting your permissions. Because I think they've said before, the reason why you could still see like the go to base button or the copy this data button is because if someone were savvy, they could. I would say just make it harder for people, only the super, not even super tech, you just click inspect, but only the super determined people would be able to take your data easily. But I think from their perspective, for as long as data is loaded the way it is, if you wanted to take all the data, you could, whether or not that button is there. So that's a fundamental change they would have to make.
Buttons bring up another point in interfaces. And that actually brings up a comment that I saw a second ago, was a button in an interface to run an automation would be very slick. I think.
Yeah.
Buttons currently don't even run automations.
No, so automations are triggered either by a time change or by a change in the record data. So you would need, and it kind of goes against the point, I think, of an automation. It's supposed to happen without any sort of user interaction per se, but is that like a button element or similar to the button field type?
I would say it'd be nice to have both.
Mhm.
Like if I could have a button, just like a webhook, I guess. I mean, it does, but not have to open up the webhook.
I think really what we're looking for is more of a kind of visual scripting model. It's kind of what automations is already. More like a no code feel to be able to build a script.
I don't think, well,
yeah, I don't see interfaces kind of moving in that direction as like a.
No, not as interfaces, just as, because I mean, basically
I see.
what we're asking for a button to trigger an automation is for a button to run a script.
Yeah.
And so if you had some sort of script writer, a visual code builder, whatever you want to call it, that's kind of what you're asking for in that. Could you send a webhook to something?
You could.
So,
a button send a webhook?
If the button activates the script app, and if the script app sends a webhook, then yes.
I was going to bring up, sorry, totally unrelated. And
Go ahead. We've been all over the place.
Lindsay asked in the comments, we played around with making views private just so it's less easy for read-only people to come in and see what's going on, but the private views showed too. It was weird. One of the things that I've noticed in a lot of bases, and I always toggle this on, but show everybody's personal views. I'm the only collaborator on this, so I think that's why it's a little bit grayed out. I guess I can toggle it, but I don't know why it grays out. That's interesting. But Lindsay, that might solve your issue.
Do you happen to remember if it's on by default or off by default?
I don't know. I turned mine on so many times.
I'm pretty sure it's off because my people in my bases do not ever see my personal views. I don't even think they know what personal views are.
It might be that whoever made that comment may have turned them on then, turn that option on. And that's a setting at the table level. It's not a per view thing that you have to change, but it is per table. So
we had another one, Josie.
Or at least per base.
Yeah, that. I've gotten tripped up by that a few times. I'm like, the client's like showing me a view and I'm like, I can see it's a personal view. I'm like, duh, it's personal. But Josie said, I got here a little late, so I'm sorry if you mentioned this, but I'd like to lock an interface where my collaborators can't edit it. Did I miss something? And I don't know about that.
I don't know what permission level you need to have to edit an interface, the interface designer.
That's a
Yeah,
great.
I don't know. It might be creators and editors can edit the interface designer, and
I hope it's just creators. Creators would make sense if they made it just so creators would be able to, but I don't know.
again, the permissions level. I feel like there's either a missing sort of column in that table that we had shown earlier, or someone, I think many episodes previous to this said it would be great if you could make an a la carte build your own permission level. I know.
Also, how would they, so if assuming down the line they enable it so you can have multiple bases on one, which permission level would you choose for someone to be able to edit an interface? If maybe they're read only in one, editor in one, owner in the other, like could they, and like there's no currently an interface permission level,
Yes.
so you couldn't say like creator of interfaces because they'd also have to be on all the bases.
Oh, well, hold on. It's in this table. So let me.
Did you find it?
Yeah, I didn't scroll down far enough. So creator, editor, commenter, read only. So here's what you can see. So you can only create an interface or group of interfaces if you're a creator. Editors can edit records, and anyone can view. So hopefully that answers what that commenter's question was.
I feel like then permissions have to be the reason why we can't have multiple bases in an interface. Because how would they decide which permissions to give people to edit the interface itself, edit the data?
Yeah.
That has to be all revolves around permissions, which we will hopefully be seeing upgraded.
So, yeah, so I remember Kavan saying on Tuesday that her first thought was the placement of interfaces in like the homepage view might be temporary. It might not live there permanently, because bases are sort of categorized at a workspace level. And right now, all interfaces are tied to one base. In the future, they might be tied to multiple bases, but at the moment, an interface is kind of looking at one base at a time. But it's not, the interface's sort of panel, it's not then grouped by whatever workspace that base is in. And a base can only be in one workspace. So this sort of organization is a little bit confusing. And I don't know if they've kept it vague because they're thinking of ways you could sort of interconnect things in the future, or I'm not sure, but the placement of it is a little, is interesting. I don't know what to make of it quite yet.
And I also just thought, I can't wait to see if they have page level permissions as well as interface level permissions, and where do you put multiple interface? Like,
yeah,
so you want to share. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so both of these are part of the same interface. Interface test is the name of the whole interface, and you're saying page level. So
yeah,
only give me access to first test, or only give me access to untitled, but not both.
Yeah.
Got it.
See, it makes sense to me to have just the same permissions that you get whenever you create a share view link, generate a password for it, generate, whitelist 2 usernames.
Yeah, so those two are not yet options.
Or even to generate a share view link for an interface.
Well, the link is just what the link is. It doesn't, because there's no separate level of permissions to apply, the read-only shared view versus the view that is editable if you have edit permissions. This link is just what the link is. There's no separate view. So there doesn't need to be a generate a link button. But there is no password enabled or a whitelist thing, like you're saying. Those aren't there.
Well, and two, I just even mean the same way that you can just generate a link and share view to somebody with the link in the email. To me, I should be able to do that with,
You would take it from the address bar. That's the link.
Speaking of links, one thing Kuvan brought up with this link in particular is if you look at any of like if you think of a record ID in Airtable, it starts with REC.
Yes,
It's pretty
yes,
standard that it
yeah,
starts with record. Airtable base starts with app, from my understanding.
it does.
Table is TBL. A
Yes.
view is VIW.
Something like that, yeah.
Question mark. I don't remember. But and page here is, or like this is like a page, so it's PAG.
Yes, so that was an excellent point. I think I saw Kavan wrote that as well. And that's why I've started to call these pages. I haven't seen in the interface designer it being referred to as a page, but based on what the URL is, PAG.
But if you go back one, if you just go back a page.
If I go back to overview.
Yeah, that one is kind of undefined. It's
Yes,
PBD.
so we're seeing app app, that's that's the base ID that it's connected to.
Yeah.
And
which
then
is very interesting that it's tied to a base. I didn't even realize that until now that this
well,
interface.
It makes sense to me because you can only create an interface once you're inside of a base.
Well, right now.
Right now, yes. So right now its implementation makes sense to me. Might not be ideal, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah, but like going forward, we'll see what it says. And then did anybody, I know like Scott Rose said PBD means pretty big deal.
That's funny.
Someone else, there were some funny examples. I have no idea what PBD stands for though.
Yeah, I would have suspected INT for interface.
Yeah, that would make sense.
I don't know.
Almost too much sense.
It could be that, this had some other internal title first, and then they arrived at interface, and maybe PBD stood for something, and then they went away from whatever that was. Chris has his hand raised for some reason.
Chris, do you want to talk about how you called it last week and Camille did not call it that there'd be a new interface?
No, I don't want to rub anybody's face in dog poo poo. It's just not who I am.
I already mentioned it, that I was hilariously off.
But that being said,
I was thinking of a front end, and this is not quite it, but it was still.
It is so hard to watch you guys and not scream at the screen. I'm literally screaming at the screen watching you. Camille, thank God you've got water. I was falling apart.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm still sick.
Okay. So somebody answer me this. And Camille, I totally agree with you. I know it's not the same underlying code. I just meant for 99% of the population, it's the same functionality as apps. I think it's going to confuse people. That being said, knowing what you said, Camille, doesn't this, I know, kind of mess with people's heads, but doesn't this make more sense as just a view type?
So that's what I was giving my timeline for initially. So you may recall Taylor had said that he wanted to make building your own view as simple as it is to build your own app or whatever. That's what I was sort of envisioning for my timeline of like, oh, that's probably not going to come out until 2023 or whatever. I think they're still doing that. That's not what this is.
So what was this? I feel like this is like some type of report builder. I literally feel like they're building the plane while they're flying it. It just is sloppy. The more I look at it, the more I play with it, it just feels haphazard. I don't know.
So what's your top, I don't know, 3 things that you think are missing from it that you would call it like, half-baked?
Right. To me, the only thing this thing needs to fix it and fix it instantly is a share button like you have in the forum where you can just create a URL and it's read only. That's what it needs. And it's done.
So you just want a read-only view. So it's okay. I see what you're saying.
Because at least then it would be somewhat more functional. But right now, everything everyone's saying is you can still get in and see all the data behind it. And I'm in a unique situation. I'm not worried about that. The people I share my stuff with know all my dirt, right? If I was in Rebecca's situation, again, I messaged in the group. Rebecca, I think, is one of the few people in her use case who's using Airtable like a solution. Right? She's doing everything through email, so her truck drivers don't have to deal with That's the way we should be doing this. But yet, love the Airtable community, but we've got to stop acting like we need jobs for life. We need to build solutions for people that don't ever look at Airtable. That's just my whole point. I don't know. It's making me crazy because like the permissions model needs to just go, and the whole pricing structure needs to go right after that.
Well, the pricing structure and the permissions structure are linked. So
I know, that's what I'm saying.
I'm just saying that when one changes, the other will have to change. That's all.
Yeah. But I
You're not
didn't
going to
think
get them separately.
Yeah, I didn't think they were going to be able to pull that off until I don't know, middle of next year. But I'm thinking it's going to happen a lot sooner now, because mark my words, next month when they get hundreds, thousands of people saying, "Why was I just charged $500?" All I did was create a new interface. Oh, I'm sorry, Rebecca. I'm sorry, Beth. I'm sorry, Stuart. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, this is kind of, people are gonna, I love it. It's pretty, but I don't know. By the way, I do love it.
Oh, but by the way, just really quickly so people can see, I'm sharing my screen again. If you try to add somebody who's not a collaborator, it does warn you that you're about to give them access. Maybe they should include, just a refresher course of which permission levels you will be charged for, but it doesn't just not tell you that you're about to add new people to the base.
Yeah.
But it does, but to sort of echo your point, and Rebecca said this too, there isn't a read-only version of this like you could create with a view. So
that's my thing. If it functioned like the web form view, where you could just embed some of these things in that, game over.
I don't seem to understand why you can do that way for a view and they can't get into the rest of the data, only exactly what you're telling them to look at.
Bingo, Rebecca.
Well, it's the same right now. It's the same as a base share link. So when you share a base, you're sharing the whole base. When you share an interface, you're sharing the whole base. When you're sharing a view, that's why you can only see that one tiny snippet.
Well, so maybe just make the person define a view first.
Exactly. You start with the end in mind.
I think I would rather not that, because I don't want it to be hyper reliant on a view. To Ben's point, if what we want to get to is having multiple bases at once, you don't want to say what view, because that means one view inside of one table inside of one base.
It's almost like we're trying to teach people to make snowballs out of the periodic table of elements instead of just handing them a bucket of ice.
Yeah, I would pull it up right now, but it'd take a while to find it. There was a tweet from well, you can stop sharing if you want. It's not. So I saw a tweet this week from, I believe it was someone who was on the product team at Airtable, and it was along the lines of how hard it is to make it like a no-code drag and drop software builder accessible. Like essentially one of the core values of Airtable is you can build anything like horizontally, like it fits all use cases, and how hard that was. And now I can't remember where I was going with that, but I think that's one of the reasons why this is so hard for Airtable to make. Clear in our minds.
We still haven't addressed the elephant in the room. Back to Rebecca's use case of like, at the end of the day, most people don't want to have a 49-inch monitor to get their job done. So I understand you want a horizontal solution, Howie, but at the end of the day, most people have a 3x5-inch solution and it fits in their pocket and they want their entire life to come through it. You know what I'm saying? I'm all for this, but I literally just want to scream, because I feel like we're at the precipice of something major. And what we've done now is confuse the community, maybe excite some people, but they're going to have a real hard letdown when they find out they can't do all the magical things they want to do with it. You've got half the Airtable advanced community running the tools like Salter, the other half just trying to figure out what is a CSV. It just feels like it's chaos.
Well, that's why I started off by saying the best thing for people who are just comfortable with Airtable in general, if you learned about Airtable yesterday, maybe it's not for you. But if you're using Airtable, make an interface yourself and test out what its limits are before you start applying it to real projects. It's a beta. It says that.
But I almost wish,
it's not
Camille,
done.
I almost wish, Camille, that people who were brand new in Airtable started with an interface. They don't even see the base, and they
don't.
drag.
I don't.
Well,
because
I totally get.
There's so much.
I totally get it because of where. It's because I'm weird, but I totally get why you say that, because your bias is bottom up. But I think
Yeah.
for a lot of people who might not have the skill set you do, you see a lot of interconnections and dependencies in all sorts of systems. It's just who you are. It's one of the reasons I love you. But I'm just saying, I'm doing a class next month for a bunch of ladies, and like they were talking to me about this class, and I volunteer, like, we'll pay you. I'm like, no, I won't volunteer the time. And like, I can't expect these people to kind of see it the way we see it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
I can see your
I'm-
point, because it's easier to, I mean, once we all figure out the interface designer, it's easier to build an interface because it's drag and drop and it looks nice, and it's, people don't think in tables often. But the reason why I say I don't want people to start off with an interface is because you're not going to build something that works that way.
Yeah.
You're just not. You're going to make something that looks cute, and then you're going to be like, well, how do I connect records now?
Yeah.
The other
Well,
table doesn't exist yet.
I mean,
Now
you really
I have to
need
build
like
an interface for that. It's just,
you really need like an ERD or a customer journey mapping thing. That's the reason I do when I do consulting, I do it in Miro. But I was saying, I think it was a month ago on this show, in the future, we will have people who are just interface designers. I said we will have people who just are Airtable experience designers. Do you guys remember this?
I remember that.
And I think this is the beginning of that kind of shift, because I'm telling you, I love Airtable, but once Airtable gets their front end game on, whatever we call it, I know everyone gets upset when you say front end, you mean dashboard. But once they get that game together, it's game over. I mean, this thing will just sweep over Salesforce. It'll sweep over ServiceNow. It's just going to own everything because it's so good on the back end. Except for I'm still really struggling with the new filters. It's like, oh my God. Could they have made anything more myopic in my life?
I think the new filters are amazing, personally.
No, they are amazing, but for most people who click on that,
you can only democratize so much software.
Yeah, I think we're gonna run into like no one man should have all that power. Like, at what point do you put training wheels on?
We've got all that
software.
So, exactly, we've got all that power, Camille, but you still can't take a class from Airtable.
Yeah, that's a big problem to me, is that like the videos right now provided, and I know Aaron and them are working really hard, getting people up to speed and stuff like that, but I need a playlist of videos that I can send in a Slack message and say, watch these and you'll get it.
Just have them subscribe to Ben's channel.
There's a playlist called Airtables for Dummies, or Airtable for Dummies. Is
it chronological, Ben?
I put it in an order that makes sense. If you're starting Airtable, then there's like a get started. There's a few like general feature videos to get you like up to speed. Now there's not one on the new nested filters yet, I don't think, but it's good enough to get you started.
But look at nested filters, look at interfaces, look at apps, look at the new views, look at the view sections, look at all of that. So Airtable has basically built this machine gun, and they're handing it to a baby. I just think it just needs to be dumbed down, or they need to have classes. It's like I said again a year ago, they need professional services, actual consultants, and I'm sure they have them. And Camille, you probably know. And they need an education, a real education team where you fly to California or Texas and you sit in a class for a week and you get certified. Does anyone do certification? I'm asking too many questions. I'll stop.
I don't normally plug my own videos on this, but with interfaces, it is more relevant than ever that you learn this one skill in Airtable or just in relational databases, and that is how to properly build a relational database. I have this 26-minute video. It's going to go through the different types of relationships in a relational database. And if you're struggling with interfaces or you're struggling with your own base, it might be because it's built wrong, according to proper, whatever they teach in school these days.
ERD.
Yeah, an ERD for those who are technically inclined, but go watch this video and it goes through the different types of relationships. That way you can build your database properly from the beginning. Or
so do you always wear the same shirt for the thumbnail?
I did a video where I like moved around, smiled, and did different positions, and then took different frames and made them the thumbnail. So yes.
Smart.
So you just have a whole video of Ben emotions that you grab for your screen caps.
Yeah.
I can concur.
This is so Westworld.
Yeah.
I just don't know what to do.
If you want to see, I will happily show all of the thumbnails.
Oh my God.
The fan favorite, of course, is Nacho. That's my.
So is this a best practice?
It made it easiest for me.
I love learning YouTube from you. Camille, could you see yourself having like 30 different faces for thumbnails?
I don't know, because I'm not that type of YouTuber. Because it's, I'm part of a show, so the thumbnail is always just the logo. They don't see my face until the music stops. But
I'd want to see your thumbnail.
I think I've kind of seen or noticed on certain channels where some of the thumbnails of like facial reactions seem to repeat over time. So I don't know if they do it exactly the way Ben does it, but I imagine someone just has, 10 shots of them looking happy or confused or curious
Emotions.
or whatever. Yeah, just emotions.
Yeah, but the whole cult of emotional thumbnails is like really freaking me out for 2 years. It's like we used to have clickbait titles. Now we have like clickbait emotional things. It's like, if you look shocked.
It's a really interesting comment on how the algorithms will eventually drive us.
Yeah.
I will drive you. I am the algorithm.
I mean, go look at Ben, share your screen and pull up who's the authorized channel for Airtable, the 9-figure consultant?
Aaron Kornbuilt.
Not Aaron. Aaron, I don't know if Aaron does faces.
Yeah.
Gap. Yeah, pull up his faces. He's got, what's his name?
Creative.
Gareth.
Gareth. Gareth has some amazing thumbnails.
Yes.
It's like Sears portrait art sometimes. I could check out a picture of him like with a furry background and maybe holding stuffed animals. Remember like you used to have pictures in the 80s? I don't know.
Well, we are successfully off the rails.
Oh, sorry.
And we're only 30 minutes over.
I was gonna say only 90 minutes in.
Or
Chris,
Olin Mills.
How is Disney, Chris?
We're leaving in the morning. I had to today was my day to get ready.
That's exciting.
Well,
are you excited?
I'm excited because we're using the Disney Genie. So speaking of, Rebecca said, but speaking of AI driving we're literally going and like the computer is deciding what we do every moment of the day, and we're paying extra for it. So,
you probably have a great time though.
Well, I hope so. We're going to 2 parties that last till 1 a.m. when there's like less people there. So I have not been away since the beginning of the pandemic. When I was at Disney World and got thrown out because they shut the park down. So this is kind of a big deal. I'm double vaxxed. I got my booster in the rooster up in this. Camille, do you got your booster?
I spaced out for a second. I don't know what's going on anymore.
I think we're gonna cut it off here.
All right. Well, tomorrow is the table talk about Interface Designer. So if you want to hear Aaron explain it, and I'm sure he'll do a better job than we did. Yeah. So you can submit your questions ahead of time if you go to their YouTube channel. Airtable's just YouTube channel for table talks.
I'll tell you one thing, since he started doing those videos, Rebecca, I used to not really be into the Airtable channel, but I watch the Airtable channel religiously now.
Yeah.
They've like doubled in subscribers.
What'd you say?
They've like doubled in subscribers and channel views.
Oh yeah, they have regular.
All that dopamine confetti.
Dopamine. I love it when he's got, and I like the fact, I still think it's rigged though, the prize, but I'll leave that for another show.
If Aaron is watching, my one question is show me one use case for an existing Airtable user to use interfaces.
A real user, or can he make one up? Because he would have to clear their data to be sure.
Someone who is already using Airtable, but they could be a hypothetical person.
Okay.
But also,
Shameless plug, he actually did that today on Automate All of the Things.
Oh, well, there you go. So watch Aaron's channel, which is a separate channel from Airtable,
and watch Dan's channel.
and watch Built on Air.
And
Watch
Gap
everything.
Consulting.
And Gap. Gap has
And
a lot
Ben.
of tutorials, and Ben's channel, which also has more tutorials.
Either way, if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, we would all love to see your first impressions of interfaces. I think that's probably what the title of this video will be first impression.
Yeah.
Second impressions of
And
interface.
you guys can come here and do this with us.
Yeah, we've had people from the community come, but if you want to join, just on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, go to www.videowithben.com and you can join and say how much you love or hate.
But let's try to get one show earlier in the day. There's so many people from Europe who tell me they want to come and can't.
Yeah.
Like a lunchtime show. It doesn't have to be long.
Yeah. All right. We will think about the earlier show. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for participating. And we will see you next week.
Bye.